There's the lore surrounding the 1971 death of Doors frontman Jim Morrison here in Paris, and that surrounding the 1987 theft of a bust that was sculpted and put up in tribute at his gravesite at the Père-Lachaise cemetery in the east of the French capital. For years, it's been a tourist destination. Financial police happens upon the missing bust during a raid of an apartment. Solange Mougin has more.
Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side.
Little did Jim Morrison know that his lyrics of Break On Through was heard in this clip. They take on a whole other meaning, of a break-in in the night that led to a breakthrough by police. On May 19th, Paris's anti-fraud department posted on social media that while working on another case, they'd found something out of the ordinary. A tease that then revealed in the following slide the long-lost sculpted bust from Jim Morrison's grave. With its nose still broken off and still coated in graffiti from Doors diehards, the statue has been missing since 1988, when it was stolen from the Paris Père-Lachaise cemetery. For indeed, people are strange. Some nab things from cemeteries.
It was a mega fan of the Doors who came to Père-Lachaise one night, broke off the bust, and then attached it to a moped scooter and sped through the cemetery at the crazy speed of 70 kilometers per hour. It was completely out of this world.
Sculpted by the Croatian artist Mladen Mikulin, the bust was affixed to the singer's grave on the 10th anniversary of his death, which occurred in Paris on July 3, 1971, when the rock star was just 27. The grave, with and without the bust, has become a beloved tourist stop, a hello I love you place for devoted fans. Père-Lachaise, the world's most visited cemetery, now has added security. And for flocking fans, the resolved mystery was a light my fire moment.
It's incredible, this story of finding it again so many years later.
French officials have not yet announced whether the bust will be returned to Morrison's grave, or whether this is the end of a 37-year-old case.
And for more, let's go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Anaïs Gratteau is an art historian, head of the Henry Clay Frick Fine Arts Library at the University of Pittsburgh. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Thanks for having me.
So they find this bust. Apparently, they also found an Andy Warhol. The financial police were looking for, according to newspaper Libération, had gone on a raid because the owner of the apartment, or the occupant of this apartment, had cooked the books for selling his company. And this is how it was found. It's 37 years later. Your thoughts on this bust, the story we heard about it being driven away on a moped, being stolen on a moped, even that is the subject of dispute.
Yeah, and like the anecdote itself is absolutely exquisite. So I used to work as a tour guide, and one of my favorite things to do was taking people to see Père-Lachaise. And what I'm thinking as a former tour guide is like, what a good anecdote to tell. And the story of Jim Morrison being buried at Père-Lachaise is full of good anecdotes. So I'm delightful that the bust was found. But then the art historian side of me also wonders, okay, so what's next now? So it was mentioned that we don't know if the bust is going to be returned to Père-Lachaise, and it really questions like, what do we want the grave of Jim Morrison to be? Do you want it to be, like a beautiful grave, almost pristine, because now like it's often really hard to access the grave because there is fencing. So do we want something pristine, maybe with the bust put there again, or do we want to preserve the ritual in itself? And so if you want to preserve the ritual in itself, it means allowing people maybe like to be close to the grave, to touch it, in extreme cases, steal from it. So it's a good question to ask ourselves, like, what do we want places dedicated to memory to look like?
Yeah, because when you look at the bust itself, it's still got all this graffiti on it. And like you say, the site's been cleaned up. I can remember in years past People would leave cigarettes on Jim Morrison's grave as a sign of respect for him. Harks back to a time of counterculture, shall we say, if not drug culture.
Exactly. So I remember actually the very first time I saw it. So at the time I had no idea who Jim Morrison was, and my dad had to tell me. And it was in the, I think, early 90s. So the bust was already missing. And again, I didn't know who Jim Morrison was at the time. And what I remember though is being very impressed, almost a little scared, because there was a group of people around the grave. Some of them listening to music, other smoking cigarettes and other substances while sitting on the grave, drinking whiskey out of the bottle. So it was definitely something I will always remember. And then the first time I went back as an adult, years and years later, I was very excited. I really wanted to live this moment again. And when I arrived, it was so shocking to me to see it pristine, cleaned up, and people are still, leaving little notes, leaving photos, or doing graffitis on the nearby graves, which is another issue, or on the trees. But it's definitely a very different place now.
All right, sign of the times. It's been cleaned up. And Anaïs Grateau, Florence Villeminot, and Ginny Gardula for France 24 devoted 6 months ago an entire show to the Père-Lachaise cemetery. Turns out Jim Morrison's not only the famous resident of Paris's most famous cemetery. Let's take a look.
Père-Lachaise is a secular cemetery and the final resting place of many of France's cultural elite, from Marcel Marceau to Molière. Composer Frédéric Chopin, artist Gertrude Stein, and dancer Isadora Duncan are among the many international artists buried here as well. Many tombs offer clues as to what their owners did while living. Author Honoré de Balzac's features a book and a plume. Painter Jericho has an artist's palette, and singer Alain Bachung part of a vinyl record. His tomb is covered with kisses, as was that of playwright Oscar Wilde before being protected behind glass. One of the most popular stars at Père-Lachaise is Jim Morrison, the frontman for The Doors. His fans used to leave graffiti and beer bottles. Now they fill a nearby tree with chewing gum. Antoine Parmentier brought the potato to France in the 18th century, and his grave is covered with spuds. But perhaps the cemetery's strangest tradition is linked to a 19th century journalist named Victor Noir. A life-size bronze statue of the moment he was assassinated marks his grave, with a very noticeable bulge in his trousers. Legend has it, leaving a flower in his hat and rubbing the protrusion will increase fertility and greatly improve your sex life.
So Anaïs Grateau, there's sex, drugs, and rock and roll at the Père-Lachaise cemetery.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why it makes it such a wonderful story. And the place, Père-Lachaise, is, sure, it is a cemetery, but it's also, to me, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's an amazing green space in Paris, and it's an open air museum, and it's also a place full of thousands and thousands of stories. If you're an animal lover, it's also the best place in Paris to see foxes going around. So there is only good thing there.
Is it like you just described it, because it's this green space with these beautiful sculptures? Or is there, for tourists, a fascination with the dead?
So there is definitely a fascination for the dead, and the idea that a lot of people going to Père-Lachaise really want to see celebrities, dead celebrities, which I completely get. But then, for a lot of people, there is this idea to go to a space that's beautiful, that's peaceful, thousands of trees everywhere, and you don't have. If you want to see beautiful French culture, especially from the 19th century, you don't need to buy a ticket to go to a museum. You can just wander through this nice little cobblestone streets, and art is all around you.
Is there an equivalent in other major Western capitals to the Père-Lachaise?
So Père-Lachaise is really, when it was created in the early 19th century, it was really one of its kind. It's really like the first cemetery in the modern term, meaning that the space is designed for the dead, but also for the living. And so a lot of visitors in Paris are going to be inspired by what they see. And actually, even where I live now in the US, we do have cemeteries inspired by Père-Lachaise. We call this trend the rural cemetery. And where I am in Pittsburgh, of all places, we do have one of the most beautiful ones in the entire US. But this being said, it's rather unusual.
One final question, Anaïs Grateau, what's your religion? Should that bust of Jim Morrison return to the Père-Lachaise or not?
So I don't have any good answer for you. I can tell you, though, that the fence around the Oscar Wilde sculpture sure preserves the sculpture, but I think there is something very romantic and exciting in the ritual that people create with the artworks they can interact with. And same thing with public art. If you want your art to be outside and be interacted with, at one point you have to roll the dice and see what happens.
All right, Anaïs Grateau, many thanks for being with us from Pittsburgh, the Père-Lachaise Cemetery in Paris's 20th arrondissement. Stay with us. We're going to go see the 7th art in a moment. We're going to Cannes. Eve Jackson has the latest from the world's most famous film festival.